Welcome. I am your host, Malazan narrator. In the long history of the Malazan world, few beings have shaped the fate of civilizations like the Jaghut. They are not conquerors, they are not warlords, and yet, in their defiance, they became the catalyst for a war that would reshape entire continents. Isolationists, scholars, wanderers, cursed by their own past, and the relentless vengeance of an entire species. The Jaghut did not seek to rule, but when they did, it was with a grip so absolute that even death could not break their hold. In this episode, we delve into the Jaghut, why they rejected empire, why their kind were hunted to near extinction, and why, despite all their wisdom, some among them fell to the very tyranny they sought to escape. We will explore the Jaghut philosophy, why they walked alone, their magic, powerful but never wielded for dominion, Raest and the nightmare of Jaghut Tyranny, Gothos, the lord of hate, and Hud, the enigmatic god of death, a people of contradictions, once hunted, once feared, and yet, in the end, merely trying to survive. This is the tale of the Jaghut. Chapter 1. The Jaghut philosophy. Why they walked alone. The Jaghut are a people defined by their rejection of empire and rule. In a world of chaos and conquest, they chose a path of isolation, both by nature and by choice. But why? The Jaghut saw the pursuit of empire as the seed of oppression. While empires grew, so too did the chains they placed on their subjects. The Jaghut were no strangers to suffering. They had lived through the horrors of war, the devastation of their own history. And yet, they sought neither vengeance nor dominion over others. To them, the very idea of empire was anathema to their understanding of life and freedom. They were philosophers, scholars, travelers of the vast landscapes, with their thoughts more often turned inward than outward. The notion of dominating other beings was foreign to them, repugnant even. But their very refusal to join the struggle for power would set them at odds with other races. The T'lan Imass, driven by their own need for destruction and an ever-hungry vengeance, would find their path cross with the Jaghuts, leading to an eternal struggle that would nearly wipe both races out. Chapter 2. The magic of the Jaghut, power but never for dominion. The magic of the Jaghut was not a tool of subjugation. It was a force tied to the earth itself, a magic of restraint and connection. The Jaghut did not wield their power for conquest. Instead, they used it to understand, to observe, and to protect their lands. This power, however, was misunderstood by those who did not share the Jaghut's philosophy. To outsiders, their magic was seen as something to be feared, as it seemed to defy the natural order. It was not of the earth alone, but of the deep, hidden forces that governed the world beyond mortal sight. The Jaghut had a connection to these forces that most could never comprehend. And yet, this magic was also a burden. The Jaghut, with their disdain for control, never sought to dominate. In a world of conquerors, their refusal to use their power for gain made them vulnerable. In contrast, races like the T'lan Imass used their abilities to tear down civilizations. The Jaghut, however, walked the path of restraint. But even restraint, as we will see, can lead to tragedy. Chapter 3. Raest, the nightmare of Jaghut. Tyranny. Raest, one of the most feared of the Jaghut, stands as a tragic figure. His name became synonymous with tyranny, a nightmare that shattered the philosophy of his people. Raest was a Jaghut who fell prey to the very forces they sought to avoid. Driven by his inner darkness, he became a tyrant, a king of fear, ruling with an iron fist. This was a betrayal, not only to his own people, but to the very ideals the Jaghut held dear. Why did Raest fall? Was it the weight of their isolation? The relentless cycle of time that wore down even the noblest of beings? Or was it simply the corruption of power itself? Raest's reign of terror was marked by his desire to control, to bend the will of others to his own. And so, the Jaghut, who had once rejected empire, found one of their own number creating one. But it wasn't just his power that made Raest a figure of terror. Pause. It was the way he wielded it. His cruelty was absolute. His empire was not one of expansion, but of oppression, dominated by fear and violence. In the end, Raest tyranny led to his downfall, for even a Jaghut cannot escape the consequences of their own actions. Chapter 4. Gothos, the Lord of Hate. Gothos, the Lord of Hate, is another tragic figure among the Jaghut. Unlike Raest, whose tyranny was born from a desire to dominate, Gothos represents something deeper, something much more insidious. Gothos is a figure who embodies the corruption of hate itself. The Jaghut, who valued individualism and freedom, could not escape the seeds of hatred sown within them. Gothos became the living representation of this hatred, an embodiment of everything the Jaghut had feared. His philosophy was one of rejection of peace, of unity, of everything that the Jaghut once stood for. In the wars with the T'lan Imass, Gothos' role as a leader was crucial. His hate-filled heart guided the Jaghut into a conflict they could never truly escape. The T'lan Imass, driven by vengeance, sought to destroy the Jaghut. But Gothos, with his deep-rooted animosity, only fueled the fire, leading to a clash that would see his race on the brink of extinction. Chapter 5. Hud, the enigmatic god of death. Finally, we turn to Hud, the god of death, whose role in the fate of the Jaghut is both mysterious and essential. Hud, with his ties to death and the afterlife, is a figure who often stands in opposition to the living world, yet he has a peculiar connection to the Jaghut. The Jaghut, with their rejection of empire and their detachment from worldly affairs, might have thought themselves above the reach of death. But they were wrong. Death, like their philosophy, is inevitable. Hud embodies the end of all things, whether it be a tyrant like Raest, a scholar like Gothos, or a race like the Jaghut. But Hud's role is not just that of a destroyer. He is a figure of judgment. The Jaghut may have rejected the rule of empires, but they could not escape the rule of death. In the end, Hud's presence is a reminder of the inevitability that awaits all, whether in life or in the afterlife. And so, the tale of the Jaghut ends. A people who rejected empire, only to fall prey to their own contradictions. A people who sought peace, yet were hunted to extinction. And yet, in the end, they were merely trying to survive. Their legacy lives on, not in their philosophy or their magic, but in the stories of those who crossed their path, the T'lan Imass, the Malazan Empire, and the gods who watched over them. Thank you for joining me. I am your host, Malazan narrator.